Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to give the first speech of this afternoon's WISE session. WISE has many great highlights. For example, this afternoon you will enjoy the Eyalkanda session, everything you always wanted to know and never dared to ask. But I would really insist upon one of the really great things about WISE, one of the highlights, and that is being in the room when the one and only Jose Sentamans gives a speech, because they are works of art, they are poetic masterpieces, and one of Jose's best speeches is about his favorite passion, which is surfing. Okay, and Jose and I even went on a surfing adventure once, a surfing holiday to Lanzarote, and I mean, it was kind of half a surfing adventure because only half of us actually did the surfing. Jose went surfing and I decided that I much prefer cycling, and of course I always have to mention cycling in my speeches and point to my mandatory cycling t-shirt, which I wear a different one of every day at WISE, and so I decided that I find surfing too boring, and so I went cycling instead. And so what are the main differences there? Well, sorry. These are two sports, right, which maybe sound the same, but they're very different. They both have the word surf in them, and maybe kite surfing stole the word from surfing, because as far as I'm aware, kite surfing was developed mainly in the 1980s, whereas, as Jose just told me, surfing has existed for thousands of years in one form or of another. Basically, getting on a board and being on a wave, that is kind of a simple concept, isn't it, for simple people? and so whereas kite surfing is more elaborate. I mean, the idea of having a sail on an object that moves over the sea, that is of course a very old concept, because that is basically a boat. A boat is an object that floats on the sea and which has sails on, and kite surfing is, in a way you could argue it's similar, because you're moving on a board and your sail is the kite. So it's just holding the sail in a different way. Instead of the sail being attached to the moving object, there is a person holding the sail. Okay? And in fact, when you do kite surfing in different places, they will often speak of the kite not as a kite but as a sail, because it is a huge object, and it's very powerful as well. So for example, if I were to bring my kite into this room, I would have to inflate it first of all well, that's how you normally, that's what you have to do before you start surfing, kite surfing. You have to inflate your kite, because here we're talking about a power kite. That is a specific category of kite, which is, of course, as the name would suggest, the most powerful form of kite you can get. And so if I brought the kite into this room and inflated it, it would barely fit into this room. It's 11 square meters, and my one is a small one. So just imagine what it is to have a 16 square meter kite or a larger one. And you choose the size of your kite based on your weight, based on how powerful the wind is, and other factors. So I started kite surfing only very, very recently. For a long time I've thought, well, yeah, I'll go back a bit further. I tried surfing and I decided that it's not for me, because when you surf you have to wait in the water for a long time, and then a wave comes, and Jose really enjoys that time where you have to be patient and relax in the sea, become one with the elements, and connect to the marine environment. But I'm not really that type of person. If I do a sport, I like speed, action, and also one thing I really enjoy is using a vehicle, or using some object that carries me. So for example, I love cycling, and I love being on a bike and steering the bike and braking and and everything that is related to the movement of that vehicle, if we can call a bicycle a vehicle. And so with kite surfing, you have a vehicle, as it were, that moves incredibly fast, which is the kind of sport I really like, and it's all about controlling your movement, and it just looks great fun. And I have observed that I've seen people doing kite surfing on many occasions in many different places, but it's only very recently that I actually got into the sport, because I had a number of fears. For example, Jose told me once that he has a big car because of the size of his surfboard, right? You're
so much lies. So many lies.
Well, at least you're here to say that they're lies.
Go, it's your
Okay, well, Jose couldn't defend himself afterwards, but I seem to remember at some point hearing that Jose has a big car in order to fit surfboards into it. Not to fit people, not to fit shopping, not to fit useful things, but to fit a bloody surfboard. Excuse my language. And so I would never want to buy a vehicle just to do a sport. I want to be free, and of course I want to cycle as well to the destination where I do this sport. So I looked into it in Rome, and I live in Rome, and there's lots of good coastline nearby where you can do kite surfing. And after carrying out some research, I discovered that there are lots of good train lines that take you close to the coastline, not quite right to the coastline, but nearby, and then you can take your bike with you, offload your bike and all your kite surfing equipment from the train, and then cycle to the beach. And you can carry all of your equipment on the bike, and that is not the case for surfing, or if it is, it's very difficult. So that was one of the factors that convinced me to look deeper into this sport. And so I met an instructor, and I asked a few more questions. I asked about safety, for example, because I was quite scared of safety issues, quite concerned. And so, you know, sometimes if you look up kite surfing on YouTube or on the internet, then you'll see these videos of people being on the ground, and then suddenly a gust of wind coming that sweeps them up into the air, and this person all of a sudden finds themselves 20 meters above the ground or above the sea, maybe 30 meters, maybe they keep going up and up and up, and many people have died as a result of this. But when I met my instructor for the first time, he reassured me that that kind of accident is quite rare, and he said it's not, you can't call it a safe sport, but it's at least, it is an extreme sport, but at least it's not a very, very dangerous sport. Okay. I later then discovered from harsh personal experience that accidents do happen a lot, and I will tell you about the accidents I had. But anyway, this instructor managed to convince me somehow that I was going to get into a sport that is not too dangerous. And then I had a few other concerns which were allayed by the discussions that I had with my instructor and others, and so I decided to take my first lesson. What happens in your first lesson? Well, it's quite a long time before you actually get into the water. With kite surfing, the most important thing is obviously maybe not obviously, the most important thing is the kite. In surfing, you need to become a master of standing up on a board, balancing on a wave, whereas in kite surfing, it's completely different. You have to learn to manage and control this beast that you have flying up, this giant sail that you have that can whip you off into any direction at the drop of a hat. And so it is quite a scary experience, I must say. And so you spend a lot of the time of your first, when you're starting out doing kite surfing, most of your time at first is on land, on sand, on the beach, and you learn how to fly a kite. And so it's all about you learn how to raise the kite into the air, and then if you have the kite directly above your head, then it's pretty much safe. It will more or less stay there, and that's because, if you can see my hand, the kite is flat like this, and so that there's an equal amount of air going under the kite as going over the kite. So it's like you have to learn a bit of aeronautics when getting into kite surfing. So it's a little bit like the wing of an aeroplane. So when a pilot wants to fly up, when he wants to go to a higher altitude, then he will lower the flap of the plane, of the wing, and then that means there's more air passing underneath, and that pushes the plane up. It gives it what's called lift. And then, so basically it's the same principle with a kite, just that you don't have an engine. It's more about the wind pushing you. So what happens is, I've got the kite above my head. As long as it's directly above my head, it's going to stay flat and it's going to be under control. But then if I use the control bar, if I pull the control bar down, then it doesn't actually move the kite, okay? People think that you're moving the kite with your arms, but that's not the case. You're just changing the shape of the kite, and then the kite reacts to the wind. So what you do is you change the shape of the kite so that it's like the wing of a plane. It's like the flap coming down at the back, and that means that the kite will move forward and you will feel a push from the wind. And so when eventually you have good control of the kite, then you need that initial push to get you going, and you need a steady pace, not going too fast, not going too slow, and that will allow you to glide across the water standing on your board. And so that's kind of the stage I'm at now, but I can tell you now about the accidents or the difficulties that I have had, because I can now manage, after 1 week of very intense lessons, I can now move off in that way I've described, with the kite pulling me along, not at a moderate speed, more or less. But as I was saying, my instructor said that the danger isn't really that you get lifted 20 meters into the sky. The danger really is that your kite drops into the power zone, okay? And what is the power zone? Do you know, Jose?
The city.
City? No. Okay, no, it's not a city. It's basically, the wind is, so you have what is called the wind window, okay? And that is all of the space which is upwind, all of the space downwind of you, okay? So it's like everything that is in front of me, because the wind is coming from behind. Everything in front of me is my wind window. And if the kite drops right in front of me, then it is in the power zone. And that's because, if you can visualize this, if the kite, as I said, the safest position for the kite to be is right above my head, because it's not going to move about. It's like a flat wing. But then if it is slightly in front of me, that means it's catching more wind. And then if I pull the bar further, it will catch even more wind, it will push me further, and the kite will go lower, and that means that there's more of the kite that is catching the wind. So, what is the most dangerous thing that can happen in kite surfing? It is that the kite goes down directly straight in front of you. It's like right in front of my face. Because what happens then you have all of the kite which is catching all of the wind. And that means that when that happens, and I think it happens to everyone who does kite surfing, and Jenny can actually confirm or deny all of this because she is a kite surfer herself. And I don't know, I forgot to ask if anyone else is a kite surfer in this room, but I'd be interested to know. And so so what happens is, you're controlling this kite and you want it to never drop into the power zone, because that will the wind will just pull you in that direction at such speed and strength that it causes serious accidents, okay? And I have to say, this happened to me not once, not twice, probably at least 5, 6, 7 times, okay? And so in a week of learning how to kite surf. And so I'll try and explain the experience by giving you a couple of metaphors, right? So when you're 15 minutes, maybe I'll continue in a bit. Yeah? Okay. We'll take a break here and then continue in a bit.
Oh. Power zone.
The power zone. I didn't give all the vocab, but I'm sure people can translate power zone.
Power zone? Yeah. I didn't have my guys trick. The wind would know, however.
The wind.
The power zone.
And the flaps.
Flaps, yeah.
The flaps on your kite and the like, well, which is like an extension, right, where you elongate the kite, and the
No.
flaps on the aeroplane.
The flaps on the plane that go up and down like that, but you wouldn't say the flaps on the kite.
No, did you say?
You just change the shape of the kite.
Oh, okay.
The sail. You change the shape of the sail.
So it creates some
Well, there's a lot more to come.
Yeah. In one piece.
Jenny is what I say, actor.
Should we go next door?
I could really, visualize everything that you talked about.
It was a very visual.
Yeah.
Jenny, I'm happy. Should we go?